Hey everyone, Jesse from G28 CNC, and in this video I'm going to be building this 64-inch by 64-inch Kreg Tool table. This table came in 3 boxes. I ordered all of these as individual sets, but you can purchase the table as a complete table, which is going to come with all the side rails and the legs. So in this case, I have a box of legs. This is 4 legs with hardware and feet. You can order casters if you want. And then I have 2 boxes of rails. Each box contains 4 rails, which is 2 rails per side of the table, so 8 rails total. And I went with a 64-inch table to fit a 1500 by 1500 millimeter CNC. Alright, so the legs box has 4 feet. I don't know, this looks like maybe a 3/8 threaded rod on the foot, which is cool. It's pretty large. We've got the 4 actual legs. We've got I guess they call this the leveler. That's what the foot actually screws into. Let's see. I did think that this was going to be threaded so that you didn't have to use a nut on there. So that's interesting. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Yep. So there's 4 levelers. We've got a bag of hex nuts. These are 1/2 inch. It's a flanged hex nut, so you don't have to use washers. And we've got our 5/16 carriage bolts, which is cool. So you're just going to be using either an adjustable or a socket wrench, or whatever. And some coarse drive. I'm assuming that these are for attaching the whatever your top is to the table. It doesn't say on here. I mean, it just calls them coarse drive number 8. So I'm assuming that that's to drill through and screw the tabletop to the rails once you get it put together. But yeah, all right, so that's box 1. Four rails. These are 64-inch, like I said before. I actually ordered 2 sets of these to do a 64 by 64 table. So 8 64-inch rails, and all of our hardware and legs came in the other box. Alright, so it says the first step is to attach the side rails to 2 sets of legs. I don't know that that makes sense to me. I feel like it's going to be easier to put these levelers on and the feet before I have to manhandle a 64-inch rail. So, or 2 of them for that matter. So in my case, I'm going to go ahead and put these levelers onto the leg and put the foot in there. So to do that, you're going to need a leg, a leveler, a foot, 4 carriage bolts to go through each one of these sides here, 4 hex nuts to go with those carriage bolts, your foot, 2 of these flanged hex nuts, and in my case I'm going to go for that socket, and I don't have a socket for these up here, so I'm just going to use adjustable for that. So all right, let's rock. I should note that you can only build this one way. You know, like when I was looking at it, I was wondering, does this go on the inside or the outside? But you can only build this one way, because if you had it the wrong way, these the slot for the leveler and these holes for the leg wouldn't line up. They'd be kind of shifted out, because you'd basically be expanding this thing out the wrong way. So that's cool. I'm just gonna build it flush in here. You know, you gotta kind of choose your range of where you want this to go. I really don't want this thing to be moving at all, so I'm just gonna lock it in maxed out here. But I think if you'd want to have some adjustment, you'd leave a little gap here, or maybe leave one out, and then when you get it to where you want it, put the other one in. But I don't want this to move, and I'm putting a lot of weight on it, so. All right, so one thing I was concerned about was how this foot gets set up in here, because I thought this piece was going to be threaded, but it's not. So they have come up with a solution of putting a nut on the bottom side and a nut on the top side, which is cool. I mean, that's fine. I'm not really going to be moving this thing around. The other thing is, I was wondering how well it would be adjusted once it's standing up, but this does free spin, so if you loosen this up, you'd be able to move it. I thought when I originally took it out that this was just welded in there, but there is it's crimped on. And there's this little, I don't know what that is, LDP or some kind of lubricious plastic here, so you can spin this foot freely. So that's it. We're gonna repeat this 3 more times. All right, the next step is going to be to attach 2 legs to 2 side rails. So we're basically going to be building 2 sides of the table, and when that's done, we're going to attach the remaining 4 side rails to connect everything together. I'm glad that I put all of those, the feet and the levelers on first, because these things are really long. If you're building a smaller table, it might not be a big deal to do it in the order they had, but I mean, this is 64 inches of side rail, so that would be really frustrating to have to deal with later on. So for this step, each set that you're going to build, you need 2 of your already completed legs, 2 side rails, half of the remaining carriage bolts, and half of the remaining nuts. And then for tools, we're just going to be using that, what is that, the 1/2 inch socket. And once we get everything adjusted, you're going to need a square. You could really use any square. My speed square is downstairs, and I don't really feel like going to get it because I'm super lazy. So I'm just going to use my teensy little machinist square. But the longer the square you have in each direction probably would be the better, because you're going to have a little bit less error. I'm not going to stress about it here. I think it's going to be fine. So, all right, let's rock. get it just ever so tight. And then check that squareness before cranking it down. So again, 2 carriage bolts, 2 hex nuts. I'm going to come from underneath the leg. Just going to slide this over. This is super easy. I bought steel and cut it and welded it and eventually cut it back apart and had to bolt it together for my last CNC so I could get it up the stairs here. It was a whole ordeal. So I looked around for different options this time for this bigger machine, because I can only imagine how brutal that would have been to do over again. And there were some like extrusion options on through Open Builds. They looked super cool. It was going to be a little bit more expensive. They were made specifically for the style machine that I have, like the 1515 down to the like 75. But they were going to come in like 3 to 4 weeks, and I found the same option through China on AliExpress, and cheaper through AliExpress, but you have to pay freight and deal with you know, waiting for something to come from China and then get through customs. So that was kind of like a month delivery, and I just am really impatient. So I found this, and I think it's gonna work all right. I mean, it is made to be a workbench and hold some weight, so we'll see. I should note here, you want this C to be pointing up at you while you're assembling it, because you want that on the inside of the table. I feel like that's probably obvious, but worth noting just in case. Cool. All right. There we go. One side of the table complete. So we're gonna repeat this over again. We'll have 2 sets of these. I should say 2 of these. And then we are going to attach the side rails that are remaining to start building up this table. This table is very large. This is kind of ridiculous for the space, but all I have at the moment. So I'm going to deal I can't wait to see what my wife says when she sees this thing. I did tell her how large it was, but I just don't think you get the full picture until you see the table actually in place. Oh goodness, what have I gotten myself into here? Alright, so yeah, I mean, if you had 2 people, I think you could probably bang this. I feel like I'm pretty much wrapped up here. It's just kind of putting bolts into place, but I think with 2 people, total build time would probably be like 20 minutes, maybe. It's not really a difficult thing to build, it's just large. Yeah, I think one person would be 20 minutes if you were building one of the smaller tables. So you wouldn't be balancing things like I am right now, or getting up to move, or any of that. Alright, so we are going to do the same thing over again, but for the bottom rails. And I'm just going to go for it here. And I think I'm going to square it up after, so I'm not dealing with trying to hold all this in place. This is pretty intense. All right, so I always get nervous towards the end of a bag that you're going to be like one bolt short. That's always really irritating. And they've actually given 2 extra carriage bolts, which is always awesome. All right, so you get 2 extra carriage bolts and 2 extra nuts for those carriage bolts, which is cool. Definitely going to want to square this up. Yeah, you can't even really see the whole table unless I back way up. This thing is ridiculous. So this next step I didn't get to film, but I just grabbed some 2x4s. There's 3 of them going across to brace the tabletop, and I cut those down to length and notched them out to fit inside of the rails. You're gonna want to buy one of these extended drivers so that you can go through this hole and up here, because otherwise you're gonna be fighting this from an angle. You know, if I just had a regular driver in here, it'd be super difficult to get this in. So throw a link to this. This is a Milwaukee. I'm not sure the length of this. It looks like it's probably 6 or 7 inches. And I have these number 10 by 1/2 inch Phillips screws. So I'm going to throw the driver through, I'm going to put the screw in, and I'm going to go for it. Cool. Coarse thread. Six per side, so 24 total. I bought 30 in case I dropped one or was an idiot and counted wrong. Alright, we've also got this 3/8 Irwin countersink. You can use any countersink, doesn't have to be the Irwin. It just happened to be what I had. I'm using this Torx driven decking screw, and we just want to countersink that so that the head of this screw is not sticking up over the table. You know, we want this to all be pretty flush so that when the frame's going across here, there's no wobble. So that's it. I would definitely recommend any of these tables from Kreg Tool. This thing's pretty awesome. It's definitely going to support the weight of the CNC that I'm putting up. Very easy to put together, not time consuming, and I think actually pretty cost effective compared to when I purchased the metal on my own. and put this all together. So thanks for checking it out. Remember to subscribe, like, follow. Helps out a ton and I appreciate it.